Hey everybody, welcome back to Let's Talk. My name is John, and today here on the channel, we're going to be talking about Dunkirk and its 4K Blu-ray as we continue on in our Christopher Nolan 4K Blu-ray reviews. But before we dive into that 4K Blu-ray review, I like to give a film review real quick, so if you want to skip ahead to the 4K Blu-ray review, you can do that right now. So Dunkirk was originally released back in the summer of 2017. This is Christopher Nolan telling the story of the Dunkirk evacuation that took place in May of 1940. German soldiers had invaded France. They had pushed all the Allied soldiers to the beach, and they have no way of escaping. If the German soldiers wanted to, they can pick these soldiers off one by one like fish in a barrel. But luckily, this is one of the most successful evacuations ever, saving about 338,000 soldiers, I believe. It took the help of just some regular citizens bringing their own personal boats to help save these people. It took place over the course of about 1 week, and this film takes place over the course of about 1 week if you take it from the perspective of the people on the beach. It takes place over the course of 1 day if you look at it from the perspective of the people in their boats, or when we look at it from the perspective of the air, it takes place over the course of 1 hour. And that's because these fighter jets at the time only had about 1 hour's worth of fuel. And this is Christopher Nolan just experimenting with time. And unfortunately, I really do think that hurts this film overall. This has the distinction of actually being my least favorite Christopher Nolan film. And it really hurts me to say that, because if you go back with me to 2017 when this film came out, I could not wait to see this movie in theaters. At this point, I was a Christopher Nolan fanboy. We're just coming off of Interstellar, which if you saw my review of Interstellar, you know that is my second favorite Christopher Nolan film to this point. But at the time, it was my first favorite Christopher Nolan film. And I am a huge fan of the Dark Knight trilogy. I even have the Dark Knight logo tattooed on my wrist. You know, even though The Dark Knight isn't my favorite Batman film, that's still Batman 1989. I still really appreciated what Christopher Nolan did with that trilogy of films. I love all three of those movies, and up to this point in 2017, I had pretty much loved every single film that Christopher Nolan had put out since 2005. And then even when I went back and watched Memento, which is a masterpiece in its own right, Insomnia, and Following, they're all great films as well. So to say I was excited to head into Dunkirk would really be an understatement. But unfortunately, after the movie was over, I was just basically left cold and emotionless. I remember sitting in the parking lot of the AMC theater that I saw this at, just being like, did I really not like that movie? I can't believe it. I can't believe I did not enjoy that movie. I appreciated the movie so much. From a filmmaking standpoint, it really is incredible. You know, Christopher Nolan at this point, he's just getting better and better when it comes to visuals and audio as we go from each film to each film. And after he worked with Hoyt van Hoytema on Interstellar, who also won the Academy Award for Oppenheimer, after Interstellar, they came back together to make this film. And again, we're using the IMAX cameras, and Christopher Nolan at this point, he's basically mastered it. Him and Hoyt van Hoytema are trying out new things for this film. You know, they're even making IMAX cameras handheld because Steven Spielberg and Ron Howard told Christopher Nolan, if you're going to film on a ship, the best way to do that is with handheld cameras. So they found a way to make IMAX cameras, which are huge and loud. They found a way to actually make those cameras handheld. Basically, what Hoyt van Hoytema was saying was they wanted to make the IMAX camera just as useful as a regular camera. They even mounted this onto fighter planes and everything like that, really making sure they get some of the best looking shots imaginable. They use natural lighting, and this movie from a visual standpoint is absolutely gorgeous. They put so much effort in just to the costume design to make sure that the cameras were able to pick this material up. They wanted to make sure everything was accurate to the time, and they really did nail all that. The audio is absolutely incredible. They wanted you to feel like you're one of those soldiers on the beach. You wanted to feel like you're having one long hour and 47-minute anxiety attack. Are they going to escape? The Hans Zimmer score is really helping to push that tension along. From the time we come into this film to the time this movie ends, you really don't get a break until the final 10 minutes. You're just in with these soldiers. You're really wondering, are they going to escape? And it does create great tension. You really do appreciate the filmmaking. My problem with this film overall, though, is that I have no connection to any of the characters in this film. And this film features a lot of great actors like Tom Hardy, Cillian Murphy, Barry Keoghan, Mark Rylance, Academy Award winner Mark Rylance, one of the greatest directors and actors of all time, and Kenneth Branagh is in this movie. It's a very huge ensemble cast of actors. Harry Styles, I think, makes his first ever acting appearance in this film. And everyone is doing a good job for what they're asked to do, but I just can't resonate with these characters. And I get it, it's a war film. That's not really the point. That's not what Christopher Nolan was going for with this film, which is understandable, and most people really got on this film's wavelength and appreciated this film for that. They were really into the spectacle, the big epicness of this film, but I needed just a little bit more of an emotional connection to it, which I should have naturally had, because this evacuation is just absolutely fascinating, and there's a reason why this story had to be told. And it's funny because because this movie came out the same year as Darkest Hour, which Gary Oldman won an Academy Award for playing Winston Churchill, and they explored Dunkirk in that film. And this movie made the purposeful decision of not going into the politics of this, really trying to make sure we're stuck in the confusion of what everybody else was stuck in who was involved in the actual evacuation. The only real exposition we get of this is from a couple of the lead soldiers, mainly one of them being Kenneth Branagh passing the information along to us, but that's really it. But mainly Christopher Nolan wanted to tell the story through the visuals. He didn't want as much dialogue. He actually very much purposefully limited the dialogue for this film, and I just think overall that kind of hurts this movie when you compare it to another movie that does try to also go for something really leaning into an experiment for filmmaking. While this one's trying to lead into the 3 different timelines, the one being a week, one being a day, and one being an hour. If you look at a film like 1917 done by Sam Mendes, where that film is supposed to look like it's one continuous shot, I had more of an emotional connection to those soldiers in that movie than I did to anybody in this movie, which features a huge ensemble cast of great actors. So unfortunately, when I left this movie, I just felt emotionless, numb, just really had a hard time connecting to the film. And this was the first time I rewatched this film in 7 years since I saw that movie in IMAX theaters, and I felt almost the exact same way. Unfortunately, my opinion has not changed on this film. I still think it's a beautiful showcase when it comes to visuals and audio and just the technical aspect of filmmaking. It's incredible. Nobody is doing a bad job. I just had a hard time connecting to this film, and unfortunately, this still has the distinction of being my least favorite Christopher Nolan film, and I know that a lot of people are going to be upset by that because there's plenty of people I know out there who consider this to be Christopher Nolan's best film. This is the one that got him his first Best Director's nomination, which he eventually won for Oppenheimer. It got him another Best Picture nomination. Obviously, after 2010's Inception, he would eventually win that with Oppenheimer, but this film just did not resonate with me. It brings me no joy to say that I didn't like a Christopher Nolan film because Christopher Nolan is one of my favorite directors of all time. The knowledge he brings to filmmaking is incredible. The way he's always trying to make the visuals and audio look better and sound better, I really admire the man, but unfortunately, Dunkirk just did not work for me. But what about this 4K Blu-ray? Let's talk about that right now. Well, here it is, the Warner Brothers 4K Blu-ray, and just like all the other ones except for Oppenheimer that we've been talking about, this was released back in December of 2017. This will be the last of the Christopher Nolan 4K Blu-rays that we'll be talking about that came out in December of 2017, and just right out of the gate, this is definitely the best of the 4K Blu-rays from a visual and audio standpoint, and I think a lot of that has to do with the source material. As I've watched these 4K Blu-rays go up and up, each one has gotten slowly and surely better than the last. They all suffer from the same exact issues throughout when it's not in the IMAX sequences, but this film, for the most part, does take place in the IMAX aspect ratio, which was very, very impressive, and the reason for that is because Christopher Nolan, when he was shooting this film, they used the IMAX cameras. IMAX cameras are very, very loud, but because there's limited dialogue in this film, they were able to use the IMAX cameras more and more, and like I said in my film review portion, they were able to mount these on the fighter pilots, they were using these as handheld cameras, and that's why this film just looks absolutely gorgeous. And because it's a Warner Brothers 4K Blu-ray, that means there's no Dolby Vision, just HDR10, and because it's a Christopher Nolan 4K Blu-ray, that means that the audio track is just a DTS HD 5.1, no Dolby Atmos, and it really doesn't hurt this film at all actually having no Dolby Vision and no Dolby Atmos. In fact, this 4K Blu-ray, out of all the 4K Blu-rays that I've seen from Christopher Nolan, so far, without seeing Tenet, even though I have seen Tenet, but so far as we're reviewing them, other than Oppenheimer, Dunkirk is the best of the 4K Blu-rays, and it kills me because this is my least favorite Christopher Nolan film, but I cannot deny how good of a 4K Blu-ray this is. Originally, this had a slipcover on it. I didn't get it with a slipcover, but in its original pressing, it did have a slipcover, so maybe you're lucky and you have a slipcover if you have this Dunkirk 4K Blu-ray. Just like all the other Christopher Nolan 4K Blu-rays, you get a 4K Blu-ray, you get a Blu-ray, and then you get a special features Blu-ray. And this 4K Blu-ray probably has the least amount of special features in comparison to all the other Christopher Nolan 4K Blu-rays. You know, as the visuals and audio get better, it looks like the special features get less and less and less. At one point, we had special features not just on their own disc, but they also were on other discs as well, on the Blu-ray and even on the 4K Blu-ray for some of the other films. This one, it's just on the special features disc, and you can play them all in one shot. It's about an hour and 49 minutes long, or you can play them as little featurettes, but if you watch them as one long documentary, it still is a fantastic documentary, so I can't knock these special features at all personally, because that's all I ever ask for, is a nice documentary about the making of this film, and they really do leave no stone unturned. You know, I just would have liked a little bit more, but that's just me being selfish. Overall, that is awesome. I absolutely absolutely love that. I just would have wanted more. That's my only complaint about it. Even in a film like this, which I don't absolutely love, I just still love filmmaking in general. I still just like seeing how the sausage is made. It doesn't matter if I love the film or not. In fact, sometimes a bad movie, now this is not a bad movie, I just don't love the movie, but even seeing how a bad movie is made, it still takes a ton of effort. And watching the special features for this, it really is so impressive what they did to make this movie work. It blows my mind. Even if I don't love the movie, it's still such an achievement in filmmaking. It's incredible. Really taking the next step when it comes to the IMAX format, and now we have films like Dune 2 just even taking that to the next step when it comes to visual storytelling. So the special features are still very good on here. And now that audio track, that DTS HD 5.1, if I had some complaints about Interstellar where you had to pick the remote up and constantly adjust the volume, you did not have to do that with this one. Everything was mixed crystal clear. Like I said, this film doesn't have a lot of dialogue, but when it does need it, it comes in clear. But for the most part, you get that Hans Zimmer score, you know, that clock ticking underneath everything. All that comes in great. All the sound effects are all done so well. Had no issues with this DTS HD 5.1. In fact, it really did impress me. It's one of the better straightforward DTS HD 5.1 tracks I've actually ever heard. You can get that on the Blu-ray as well, so don't worry about it. Whatever one of these discs you have, you're going to get that DTS HD 5.1 track, and you're also going to get the IMAX scenes, which are on the Blu-ray and the 4K Blu-ray. But when you go from the Blu-ray to the 4K, just like Interstellar, it's a pretty noticeable jump. The Blu-ray is very dim, very dark, while still hitting those deep blacks, which is impressive, but, you know, we don't get as much detail. And then when we go to 4K Blu-ray, we're brightening things up while maintaining those deep blacks, and now we're getting a huge amount of detail. Everything just looks so good. Looks like you could step into your screen when we're in those IMAX sequences. And just like all the other ones, when we switch back to the regular aspect ratio, but unlike the other ones, the regular aspect ratio is 2.20, so those black bars actually shrink a little bit, so it's a little less jarring when we switch back to them. But there's a lot less of those regular standard sequences compared to the IMAX sequences. For the most part, this movie does take place in IMAX, and it's better for it. It's going to fill up your screen, which I saw people complaining about recently, which is very strange. They were saying how they prefer the 2.39 aspect ratio over the IMAX aspect ratio because it makes things feel more cinematic. I mean, I think the IMAX aspect ratio makes everything feel cinematic. Yes, we don't get that ultra wide screen like you would get in like Lawrence of Arabia, but we get pretty damn close, and we're also now filling it up where we get from top to bottom, and we're getting more of that as well. I mean, this I think is the best way to view a film if we can do it, if it's possible. You're really going to get the most real estate out of your own home screen or even in theaters. So I never really understand that complaint. I get what they're saying, but I don't know. I just disagree with that. I think the IMAX format is absolutely gorgeous, and when you bring it to home theaters, it's even better because not every 4K Blu-ray gets the IMAX sequences, even if they're filmed in it. There's a rumor going around now that Dune 2 is not going to have the IMAX sequences on its 4K disc. Let's hope those rumors are untrue. It's Warner Brothers, and this is a Warner Brothers 4K disc. This came out 2017. That has the IMAX sequences, so that just would not make sense. But visually, this 4K Blu-ray, absolutely gorgeous. Like I said, it does have some of the same issues that the other Nolan 4Ks that came out in 2017 did, where I feel like the saturation is just a little bit too high, which does kind of create an unnatural look. But again, that's just in the non-IMAX sequences that you're going to know that. The IMAX sequences just clean everything up, but when we're in those non-IMAX sequences, I just feel like the saturation is just a little too high, and it kind of makes the skins look a little bit unnatural, you know, almost like too red. I don't know. Not a big fan of that. You know, this film in general is a much cooler looking film, you know, blues, grays, browns, you know, not much color, very much of the 1940s. So this isn't a very warm looking film. So when their skin kind of looks a little bit unnatural like that, where they're trying to like make the film look warmer unnaturally in these certain sequences, it just doesn't necessarily work for me 100%. But the naked eye might not really notice this, but I've been watching these Christopher Nolan 4Ks, and I just see the same issue constantly. But again, a very minor complaint. Overall, visually, this 4K Blu-ray is absolutely stunning. This is the one 4K Blu-ray in here, this and maybe Interstellar, where I could say, yo, Interstellar had a little bit more room for improvement, but Dunkirk, there's not much. Other than these very minor complaints, this is still a fantastic 4K Blu-ray, even 7 years later. That should just show you the power of source material. This came out the very same day as Batman Begins, The Prestige, The Dark Knight, and I think that Dunkirk looks way better than all three of those 4K Blu-rays, and I just think that, you know what, the technology that Christopher Nolan was using at the time, it just lent itself so much more to the 4K Blu-ray format that it's a lot better to clean things up in 2017 if the source material is much better. Whereas now, they might have to do a little bit more work to clean up some of those older Nolan 4Ks. Well, they might not have to do too much work on Dunkirk. But how would I rate Dunkirk's 4K Blu-ray at a score of 1 to 10? You know, I don't really love the film, but I cannot deny that this is a great 4K Blu-ray, so I'm going to give it a really solid 9 out of 10. And before I get out of here today, guys, it is Friday, and that means it's time for our digital code giveaway. In every single video we do here on Friday, I'm going to ask you guys 2 digital code giveaway questions. All you have to do is answer one of those questions in the comment section below. As long as you do that, you come back to Tuesday's video. That's right, if you haven't noticed yet, Tuesday is going to be the new day for the giveaway where we pick our winners. So make sure you guys come back to this Tuesday's video. We'll put your name on a magic wheel. We'll spin that bad boy 2 times. The 2 names it lands on, they have their choice of the digital codes you've seen on the screen before you today. And just before we go any further, I want to thank everybody who has been donating digital codes so we continue to do this digital code giveaway. It's really appreciated. Thank you guys all so much. You guys deserve more than a shout out. I just really appreciate you guys doing this, and everybody who participates in the digital code, we all owe them a great deal of gratitude. So thank you guys all so much for donating to the digital code giveaway. And what are this week's 2 digital code giveaway questions? Well, I figured I'd ask you, since we're talking about Dunkirk, and that is one of my most disappointing movie experiences of all time. I told you I love Christopher Nolan, and I had high expectations for this, like I have every Christopher Nolan movie, but I was just so disappointed. Have you guys ever experienced that? What is a film that you were so excited for, but just left the theater just so disappointed? I want to know that. Make sure you answer that in the comments section below. And then after that, what is another question I could ask you guys? Well, Dunkirk is a war film, and I want to know, what is your favorite war film of all time? Leave that in the comment section below as well. And guys, while you're down there, don't forget to hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, turn notifications on, share this video, or you can even become a channel member. We have a friends of the channel tier, or we have a producers tier. That's where you're going to find John Doe Juggalo, Jason Martin, and Mr. Smelly Potato. We also have a director's tier. That's where you're going to find Frank from Frank's Media and Reviews. Make sure you guys head over to John Doe Juggalo and Frank's Media and Reviews channels. Subscribe to them, especially if you're a big fan of physical media, and I promise you, you won't be disappointed. But all of that information is in the description below. But if you got no money to throw away, don't worry about it. We just appreciate you checking out the video. We hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, make sure you get out in those streets and tell your friends about us, and then we'll be seeing you around.